Hello and welcome to the B&H Virtual Event Space. Last week we ran into some technical difficulties, but fortunately, Mr. Jeff Cable made time for all of us again and is back on the platform, along with event sponsor Zenfolio, for the 2025 version of the 10 best features of Photoshop that every photographer should know. Jeff, we can't thank you enough for making time to come back. Welcome.
Yeah, well, like do a little clapboard. Take two. Here
Take
we
two.
go. Yeah,
Actually, I think we'd be on six. We tried a lot. We tried. We
we
tried and
did. We did
tried.
try a lot, and I knew at some point I'm like, no, this is just not going to happen. But here we are. We're back. Hopefully, everybody who was on last time could make it back, and maybe even then some. And I've had time to tweak a couple things, and I actually shot a wedding, a very small wedding, intimate one this weekend, and there's an image from that I'm going to show. So I just added that in. So there's benefit to the delay.
Nice. Well, it's been 10 years since you did something like this topic with the event space. Has 10 years of changes flipped the script completely, or will some old habits and techniques still come in handy today?
There's still some old things. Obviously, things have changed quite a bit in the technology and AI, but those are still not what I use the most. And so it's really kind of updating certain things that I have changed over the years, but some things have not changed. And so it's a combination of both. But I know that that video from 10 years ago was a little stale, and so I wanted to create an update, and here we are.
All
So.
right. Well, before I go, I'd also like to take a second to thank all of you that tried joining us last week and are here again today. We apologize, but are very grateful to you for linking back up with us. That said, if you've got any questions, leave them in the YouTube chat and we'll address what we can at the end. Jeff, take it away.
All right. So I'm going to share. Let me share my power. We're going to do a couple slides here. You guys able to see that, I hope? So let's go in here. So I changed the title to the 10-ish best features because there's a couple that I'm adding into that. So first of all, I want to thank Zenfolio. I've been using Zenfolio now for, I don't know, 15 years. During my photography business, my whole website is Zenfolio. All of my galleries for my clients are on Zenfolio. They are kind of the backbone to my business. So I appreciate them sponsoring this. So if you guys have not checked out Zenfolio, please do. It's an awesome product. Before I get into Photoshop, I want to tell you guys just a couple seconds for those who have not watched my presentation on Event Space on photo workflow and culling. I just want to kind of go through for a split second here on before I get to Photoshop. So I use Photo Mechanic. Most of the Olympic photographers do because we're working so fast. But basically, I'm shooting. I download, or it's called ingesting, into Photo Mechanic. So I have all of my images. I then cull through those and I get rid of the bad ones, either out of focus or ones I don't like. I'll delete all the ones, all those that I've tagged and that I don't want. Then I'll rename them. So in the example you'll see here, it says Photo Tour, 390, 391, so forth and so on. Then I'll classify. So I'll make a second pass. And I did this for the wedding that I shot on Sunday. And I went through and just ranked, okay, here's the ones I don't want. Here's the ones I want the client to see. Then I just take those, I rename them, I resize them down so that I can put them into Zenfolio. And then I retouch them for them. And I'll show you one of the retouched images that I did from the wedding. And then I upload them to the Zenfolio site so the client can then pick what they want to order. And then I deliver those either in digital format, prints, or album. And then once I'm done with all of that process, I back up onto my server here, and my server then replicates to another server I've got far away from here. So I have every image I've ever taken, which is I think 2.2 million images on both servers. So God forbid I have a fire or something happens here, those images stay somewhere else. So that's kind of my process that gets me to Photoshop. Here's the equipment I use. I use a Mac Studio here. I also have a MacBook Pro and a MacBook Air. So I use those interchangeably. The MacBook Pro I use for the Olympics and everything where I need full-blown speed. If I'm doing a trip where weight is an issue, like gear and how much I'm moving around from place to place, sometimes I'll take the MacBook Air. Not quite as powerful, but it does a very good job. I have a high-res display here. I use the Apple's display here. It's a 6K monitor, which definitely helps. I do edit also on my laptop, but I really prefer the bigger screen. I do have a 2 terabyte SSD internal, but I use external SSDs. I use the Crucial external SSDs here on this machine. And I've got multiple 4 terabyte drives that I use as working drives. And I back up to the QNAP drive. That's my NAS drive, the network drive. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Wacom tablets. I live on mine. Everything I do today will be using the Wacom tablet. It basically allows me to use a pen, if you can see it here, on the tablet. So I don't use a mouse. I don't have a mouse on this machine. And I have a tour box. For those who've never seen it, it's a really cool, inexpensive little box where I can control brush size and everything from a little dial. And that is, I don't know if it'll reach, but it's down here. I'll try to show it to you later. But look up tour box, pretty cool little product. Obviously, I've got my cards and readers. I've got a Canon Pro 4100 printer behind me and a Pro 1000 to my left. So I do a lot of my own printing here as well. So, all right, where do I start? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you guys about 5 or 6 slides here, and then we're gonna jump out of the slides and we're gonna go into images, and I'm gonna show you examples of how I retouch them. And really my goal in the product and doing in this whole process is taking a good image and making it great or as good as I can. So first thing I do is I start in Adobe Camera Raw, and this is pretty similar even in Lightroom, but allows me to do tweaks to exposure, white balance, shadows and highlights, and then maybe some others. And we'll talk about some of those others. That's why I put 10-ish favorite features of Photoshop. But those are what I use the most inside of the raw processing. And then I also sometimes use an adjustment brush, dodge and burn, graduated filters, and vignette, and I will show you that. Those are some of the bonus ones that I do inside of Photoshop, inside of RAW. The most used tools for me, say that 3 times, in Photoshop, cropping, which seems really simple, but I fight with cropping quite a bit. And how do I get the best crop? I use a spot healing brush, which I don't believe even existed 10 years ago when I did the last presentation. And this tool, which is the J tool on your keyboard, I say J for Jeff, but it's not. But this is probably my most used tool of anything I use inside of Photoshop. And that's why I thought, boy, we need to do a refresh on that old presentation. The cloning tool, I still use occasionally, although I rely more on the spot healing brush now than anything. Sharpen tool, dodge and burn, or either lightening or darkening parts of an image. So I'm going to show you all this as we move forward in the photos here. This is also some other stuff I do in Photoshop. This is not part of the 10 most used things, but I do put my Photoshop into full screen mode with a gray background. In other words, it doesn't show up in a window. It goes full screen on my computers because I like to work that way. So I've got that set as a default. I have predefined certain actions, and you'll see this where I can resize to 20% or 40% or 50% or whatever. And I've got these actions predefined. I even have predefined brushes, and one of them is my logo, so I can just watermark any image I want. All right, this is my photo tours. I thought I'd throw that in here because I throw it into every presentation. Pretty much most of everything is sold out this year except for Peru and Galapagos, which are awesome trips. And those are coming up. If you're interested, please email me and let me know. And the way to get a hold of me is here. This is just jeffcable.com. You can reach me at jeff@jeffcable.com or through social media. Now, I'm getting out of this, and I'm going to stop the share here. And I'm going to instead share my whole desktop. This will be fun. All right. So let's kill this. Put that away. Hopefully you guys can see Photo Mechanic here on my desktop. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with this image. Speaking of Peru, this is on the photo tour that I just did in Peru last year. But this is the final image, and this is where I started. And this is minor stuff, but I want to show you how to get from one photo to the other. So a couple of things you'll notice is a lot of the change in the shadows, the highlights, and the sky. But you'll also notice that there was a couple people here in white, and the person here in white, and I found those people distracting. I'm okay with leaving some people, but for some reason, this kind of bothered me here. It looks kind of weird, so I want to remove them. So if I go into Photoshop to go into edit, now it takes me into Adobe Camera Raw. And the first thing I do, and I use this almost every time I do an image, is I go and I click on auto. So I'm going to click here on auto, and this is going to take me in here and show me what it thinks I should do. And I actually really like that. It's a good starting point here. Okay, so then I might make minor tweaks from there. So no, I want it to be a little brighter down here, maybe a little bit more contrast. The green could come up a little bit. Let's increase the vibrance a little bit. So I'm making minor tweaks here in inside of Photoshop. And you'll notice the highlights. Look at the sky here with the highlights at 0 versus bring the highlights down. And it's not affecting the area down here. It's really affecting the sky. But if you look at the starting point, versus here, it's much more dramatic by dropping the highlights down. So again, I'll start with auto and generally just come down here to highlights and shadows. And you'll see the shadows again to 0. Bringing up the shadows down here is affecting the lower portion of this image, while the highlight is affecting the upper portion. But if I kind of leave it at that and hit return, that'll take me into the starting point where I can start making tweaks. Like maybe I want to use the J tool and get rid of any distractions here, and I can just take them out. And it's that easy. There's my finished product. So that's kind of the shadows and highlights portion. Let's get out of that for a second. Same thing here. This is my picture from the Golden Gate Bridge. This is from the photo tour I did in San Francisco back in September. But it started like this. And so if you look at this, I was exposure comp down 1 1/3. And the reason I did that when I was shooting these night shots is I wanted the trails of the cars not to be completely blown out. I wanted to have as much of that data to work with as I could, knowing that my image would be overly sharp. So if I go into this and hit edit, and we have this shot, if I hit auto again, it's much better. Again, might be a little too bright here. So maybe we would take these highlights and bring them down just a little bit. I like what it did with the colors. Maybe tweak I don't know if I need that much of the shadows to be pulled, maybe about there. And this looks pretty good just like that. But again, we started here, and even with just hitting auto takes me much closer. So I use that quite a bit. So just simple things like using the auto button to kind of give you a guessing point. And sometimes it's way off and it doesn't look good, but sometimes it does a really, really good job. So I use that as kind of my starting point. Okay, now this shot here, this is a hummingbird in Peru. They have a really long beak. I thought that was really cool, but the image looked like a throwaway. This is how it started. So it was going up to a feeder. I didn't want the feeder in the shot. I've got some distractions up here at the top left, but this is a dark, muddy mess. It was late in the day, and the sun had dropped, and it was not what I wanted because I was pushing the ISO to 6,400. But some people would look at this and go, no, this is a throwaway. But it was the only shot I got of that bird. So I'm thinking, okay, I want to try to save that. So again, I'll hit auto, much better, still very dark here in the middle. So I can either brighten this, right? Take it to about here. I want to push the colors and the vibrance maybe a little bit to about there. Now we're getting close to what I want. The shadows, I can tweak just a little bit. So you'll notice if I have the shadows at 0, and we look at the face of the hummingbird here, we're losing some of that detail. Whereas I bring the shadows up, we start seeing some of the details here. Now, you'll see a lot of the grain and the noise in this shot. So if I were to take this and open this photo, the first thing I'll want to do is crop this. Let's say maybe something like about that. And now we have this area here. I can just use the J tool and just paint this out. Nope, didn't do great. Do it again, tweaking it if I want. Or the other thing I could do is I could just come in here and just come in and say, fill it with generative content aware fill. That will do a better job. And there's our image. Now, as I mentioned, it's really grainy and nasty in here. You can see that. And I do use Topaz denoise. And if you haven't tried it, it's amazing. And that will then clean that image up and do a really good job. But again, what we're doing is we're taking an image that you think is unusable and turning it to something that's really good. So this has been denoised. Let me just go in this for a second and show you. All that grain that you saw in the previous shot got taken out. And yet the details and the highlights and everything still are retained here, which is really, really important. So you'll see the detail all the way to the tongue sticking out, and that's retained. One of the reasons I really like the Topaz product. Okay, so going back again to the raw and the shadows and highlights, here's an image of my girlfriend's daughter, Hannah. This is how it started. And again, I'm shooting an exposure comp of minus 0.7 or 3/4 of stop down. Here's the finished product. Here's before. Now, this is really simple. I shot it to try to preserve this sunlight. And generally, when I'm shooting sunset, I will purposely shoot exposure comping down. Look what happens just by hitting auto, right? That's pretty cool. Now, Hannah's a little dark here. So I can actually come in here, and this is one of the things you couldn't do in the past. I'll go ahead and choose the masking option here, and I'll say, you know what? I want to actually, let me delete, hold on here, let me delete this mask. Delete all masks. So I go to the masking, and I say select subject. And it does a really good job of selecting just the subject. Now I can brighten Hannah up like maybe about there. Now she's looking a little pale compared to the sunset. So I can also come into the color temperature and maybe warm her up so that it matches the sunset color a little bit more. Because I didn't put a gel on my flash. We were just down there for fun. And so look at the difference between just that from here to warming up. You don't want to go too warm, but maybe about right there. And again, from here to brightening it up. So I know that I can take this into Photoshop and I can, take that image back for a second that started like this, like this one here, and tweak it to there. That sun, because I'm shooting underexposed, I'm able to preserve a lot of this color that if you're not shooting, if I'm shooting at, 0, you're going to lose some of that. So it's handy to do that, knowing that I can come in and tweak this later. Now on this shot, the other thing I would do, is clean up the hair, and I'll show you that in another photo here. All right, let's take another one here. This is a shot. This is a finished shot of a toucan flying in the rain. This is ISO 3200. But again, this is how I shot it. This is from the balcony of my room in Costa Rica. I was photographing the bird, and it decided to take off in flight. And I was using the R5 Mark II, which does an amazing job of tracking my subject. So really, really hazy and rainy and cloudy. So here's my finished product. Let's hit auto. Better. Not great, but better. Now, what I could do to make this even better is I can pull the contrast a little bit. I can also use the dehaze. Again, another look at the difference. Just again, 0 here. And by pulling the dehaze, I now see all the detail in the bird, and even in the rain, you see the raindrops are more defined. Maybe bring the highlights down a little bit more so I don't blow out right here on the bird. But you'll see now I have a lot more detail. So again, starting point here like that, with dehaze like that, by just pulling dehaze, hitting auto, doing a small couple of tweaks, and now I've got a good saved image. And also, same thing I did here. I had a lot of the grain and noise here, so I ran the topaz denoise on it. But simple tweaks right here. Take an image, let's cancel this and go back. Again, from something like this to something like that. So a lot of times I'll take people on photo tour and they'll take a photo and they say, nope, it's a throwaway. And I'm saying, well, hold on a second. That might still be good. And I knew when I shot this image, it was rainy. It was, a lot of clouds in the air and everything. But I thought, you know what, it's worth a shot. I'm gonna give it a try. And actually, I really like this image. It's one of my favorites. Okay, something as simple as cropping. Look at this image of this bird. This is in Costa Rica. Great background, really diffused in the background. A lot of bokeh. This is leaves in the background. But I really like this image. This is the original. So this is, we were sitting at breakfast at the resort. And this is a feeder that they have there. And they had some fruit over here for the birds. And I was photographing, this is at 500 millimeters with the Canon 100 to 500. Also with the R5 Mark II, so plenty of resolution to play with. But I knew that I didn't need all this in the shot. I mean, it's okay, but I don't really want to see aluminum here or posed here or this leaf sticking out. I want to crop in tighter. Now, one thing I should mention is I don't like anything bright on the edge of my frame. So anything that's white or really bright here, I try to get rid of. So all I did is I just did a crop on this image and took it from that into this like that. Now you'll see that these pieces here, I felt that those were distracting. So in the finished image, I actually took those little twigs out. I left this, which was fine, but I didn't want this stuff in the frame. It could have been left in, but just little stuff, little tweaks to make it better. I think it's a sharper image. It's a better looking finished product. Now, there are different uses of cloning or using the adaptive healing brush. When I remove those little branches, I use those brushes. If you've watched my Olympic presentations, you know that I'm not allowed to do that. So the Olympics are very restrictive on what we can tweak. But this is a photo for me. This is not for National Geographic or the Wildlife Association where you're not allowed to tweak stuff. This is my own picture and I wanted to do it. So I figure I have the liberty to do what I want here. Here's a photo I took in Peru. We were hiking on these hanging walking bridges. It was really cool. This is also at full 500 millimeters with the this is with the older Canon R5. And I've got a bird up here, a couple birds here, a bird in the background here. I've got, again, white spot on the side, so my eye immediately gets drawn down here. So I always tell people that the human eye tends to look at two things in a photo: what's in focus and also what's brightest. So I try to make my subject, whenever I do portraits, I want them to be in front of a darker background because I want you to look at them. But here, the problem with this photo is we have berries, we have birds all over, we've got this white spot, we have these. I don't know where to look. Another bird here, and my brain doesn't know what to do. Whereas if you crop it, to this is just a crop, not much more, of that middle section, just right in here, about like that, and it takes it to this. So I did the cropping in Photoshop. I did push the colors just a little bit to get it back to what I was seeing with my eye. I don't like pushing the saturation or vibrance too high because it just looks fake. But this is what we saw. But it's a very different image if you look at this where the human eye is not sure where to look. Let me take that crop out. So here, your eye is all over the place. It's hard to believe that this is even the same photo. So simple thing as a crop. Same thing here. This is in Peru. We saw this bird fishing. Here I have the oar of the canoe. We've got the bird. We have all this brush, and we can barely see what's going on here. By just doing a simple crop, now all of a sudden we see the fish in the mouth of the bird. It's a totally different image than this one. Now we knew it was fishing because I was zoomed in and we saw it. But again, I knew when I shot this, I could take this and tweak it. So you want to look at your images as a starting product. And yes, you would love to get, 1,000 millimeter shot. This tight would be great. But I had a 500 millimeter lens with me. But doesn't mean it's just a throwaway. Here's some more pictures of Hannah. And let's take this one. Let's do this one. So this is where we started by just hitting auto. It gives me a little bit more, opens up the shadows a little bit. I might tweak the white balance a little bit to get a little bit warmer on her. I like this because she flipped her hair and we had that same sunset behind her. But there's a couple of tweaks here. And as a photographer, my eye tends to go to what's wrong with the photo as opposed to what's right with the photo. So first thing I want to do is maybe crop this in a little bit. I don't want to cut her hair off there. Let's go about here. There's a couple of things I see or I don't like. So one, this looks like it's kind of sticking out. So I'm hitting the J tool, which is the healing brush. Sorry, let me go to that. Right here, spot healing brush. There's also the remove tool, which is the AI tool. And I do use that as well. And we can do that in a little bit. But I'm going to take that hair out, that one. There's a little strand here. Let's see if we can remove that just by painting it out. And like we could even maybe paint out some of the flyaway hairs here. Again, I'm just using the J tool. One of the cool things about having the Wacom tablet is if I push really light, it's thin, and if I push heavy, it gets thick. So by just changing the pressure on the pen, I can make these modifications. And we can take little skin imperfections out if we want. Hannah's going to love me for that. Let's see, anything else here? Maybe take a couple of these out. Again, you don't go crazy here, but anything that might make it a little bit better. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Okay, so again, minor modifications here. Now, the other thing I mentioned that I do dodge and burn and sharpening. So here's a sharpening tool right here. I'm going to take that and sharpen the eyes a little bit, just a little bit, just by going over them. And then I can come here and whiten the eyes a little bit. See? Before and after on this eye, or both eyes. And that little bit just makes it stand out just a little bit more. Maybe we'll take this one out too, this curve. Because looking at it from a distance, again, my eye is going there. Something like that. Minor tweaks that'll make a difference. Okay. Now, here's a shot from Peru. I really like the way that I framed this with her off center. There's a couple things in this shot that did bother me. So let's look at the original here, and you'll see that this plastic bag, which is where if you bought something, she put it in one of these bags. But I didn't like the fact that it was hanging there. So in order to adjust this, let's go ahead and go into it here. There's another thing I didn't see before that I see now. So let me go in here. Do you see this white dot on her hat? J tool, just knock it out. That's gone. I missed that last time. Now, this one here, if I try to use the J tool, it's not going to work very well. Let's try it and see. It might. That did not work. So it's grabbing from another area and it didn't work. So it doesn't always work. We could try the remove tool, which is the new AI tool. Let's see how that does. Kind of highlight that bag. And I use this when, whoops, hold on here. I can't get to it. Hold on. There it goes. Let's see what happens. Let's see what Photoshop does here. Actually, that worked very well. And so this is where I will experiment between the two tools here, the spot healing and remove. What I did in the past when this didn't work, and I'll show you that as well. Let me go back. What I did was I just used the clone tool, which is the S for clone stamp. Okay. And what I did is I cloned from down here and just came up here and painted it out with that same wood grain. Now, this takes more time. Oops, gotta make sure that wood lines up. And this is the way I used to do it. But you saw that with the by using the new AI remove tool, it did an amazingly good job and even preserved this edge, which I just wiped out. So that is something where interchangeably you could use. And also it's very good for removing people. Like we could have some fun here. I have not tried this. Let's see what happens if I go in and let's use the remove tool. Let's see what happens if we try to remove the woman, which of course would ruin the picture. So I would not do that, but let's just see what AI does here. This will be a test. You'll notice that for the larger section, it takes longer for it to figure out. That's actually amazingly good. It's not perfect down here, but pretty damn good. So it even followed the pattern. It's not perfect, as you can tell. If you look here, the pattern up here is what it should be, and it did kind of a little bit of a sloppiness. But I mean, honestly, if I showed you this picture, you probably wouldn't even have noticed that. Or probably what I would do is continue the same pattern up to here so you don't see this top area. But again, what you can do with this is amazing. So play with that a little bit. Okay, now I want to show you some things that a little bit more detail. This is a shot I did of Hannah. So we were down in Southern California for a graduation from Chapman University. I knew taking this picture that I had all these lines on the street, and that wasn't going to work for me. I had this thing over here, so I wanted to clean that up. So this one took a little bit more work. Let's go ahead and open up the file here. This was my starting point. What I did here is a combination of the J tool, again, just kind of paint. Oops, sorry. Let me use the spot healing brush here. That. And I just kind of painted along these lines. And the cool thing about the healing brush is if I go through her legs, it actually retains it. And that's not perfect there, but you see, like if I go into her leg here, it still will not mess with the leg too much. I want to keep her shadow here, get rid of all these distractions by just painting them out. This line, actually all of this can go. Let's see what happens if we knock that out. Not perfect, but we can still tweak it. I'm just doing this quickly for you guys, but you get the idea how we could take something very easily. And I could even, there's a street sign here. I think I removed that too, but we can come in here and I find that little brush strokes versus if I were to try to take the whole thing out, it may not do a good job. So I go little by little here and tweak it. Let's just do it for the sake of doing it here. Hell, we can even remove this if we want. Let's see. Not perfect. Now the remove tool probably would do a great job there, but I'm just trying to give you a quick idea. So there, it makes it a lot cleaner. So again, taking all of these distractions, which I knew when shooting, and taking them out. I left the yellow lines. I took the white line out. I believe I took some people out. No, I didn't. Did not. But anyway, minor adjustments. And now that I'm looking, I see that little white spot up here. I could have taken that out too. Again, I see everything wrong with the photo as opposed to what's right with the photo. So here's another shot of her from her senior portraits. And you'll see that spot right here. That's a bug that was flying. I took that out. That's a skin smooth. This is non-skin smooth, and this is with some skin smoothing. Let me zoom in so you can see that here. Whoops. So they're smooth and not minor tweaks. In skin smoothing, I use the Nick software for that. And you want to be careful with it because you don't want to use it too much. You don't want to make them look like a porcelain doll by overly smoothing because then it looks really bad. So generally, when I deliver an image to someone, I'll give it both and say, which one do you like better? Just those minor little tweaks. Okay. Here's a shot I did of on a San Francisco photo tour. Here's the beginning and end. This is a really minor tweak, but I want you to look at the color saturation in the flower here. And also this edge here, this one bud right there, I didn't like that. Oops, I took that out. Just a little crop and a little bit of that healing brush, again, to finish the image. And I brought the colors back because the colors were too muted right here. This is not what I was seeing. This is what I saw with my eye. But because the way I was shooting in RAW, now the color data was there, but I need to bring it back. So don't be afraid to, again, push that a little bit. Just don't go overboard with it. This is a shot I recently did. This is a portrait of this girl for her bat mitzvah, which is coming up. And I knew when I shot it, that one little thing right here, it drive me nuts, J tool, boom, gone. That quick, I can even take out the little paint smudges here. And then I'll come up here. Do you see the hair, the flyaways right there? This is where I'll use the clone tool, stamp S. I'll clone from up here, or maybe like here, down to here, and I can just paint out the hair that's flying away there. I'm just grabbing from up here and bringing it down. Now, you don't want to go down in like that. I mean, you could, but I wouldn't. But just simple things like that. I just noticed there's another smudge right here. Boom, boom, boom. I can get rid of all these. If I was going to enlarge this, actually, this is going to be enlarged to a big poster size for her. There's also a little white schmutz right there. J tool. Now notice as I'm cleaning up the hairs here, it's keeping the lines of of her top while I'm painting this out, which is amazing. This did not exist 10 years ago. It makes my life so easy. And I do this to every shot, by the way. So one of the things I tell my clients is when you're hiring me, I will try to take it to the nth degree. I'm finishing it not for my client, but I'm finishing it for what I would want if it was my photo. All right, so here's another one. This shot here, you've probably seen this shot. This is my shot from the Summer Olympics in Paris. This is one I really wanted. When I shot this image, I knew I was going to have some tweaking to it. So here's the original, and here's the finished product. Minor tweaks to shadows and highlights, but I want you to notice a couple things. I didn't adjust much here. What I did is when I took this image, I exposed for this area so it wouldn't be overexposed, but it would be properly exposed, knowing that the rest of the Eiffel Tower and the city in the background would be dark, but my sunset would be, I'd have the data here. So by metering for this area, I'm protecting here and the sunset. Now, what I did when I went into Photoshop is, let me go back to the original here. I hit auto, watch the Eiffel Tower down here. When I hit auto, it brings back a lot of that detail, okay? Now, what I did in the original is I did also an adjustment brush, and I masked out the sky and the Eiffel Tower. So the Eiffel Tower, I went in and I painted and masked out the tower, and then I pulled the brightness on the tower. Do you see this? This is the original. And I brightened it up just by doing this. And then I can add a little bit of tweaking to that. And then this brush, sorry, that mask, let me move this here. We look at this mask here. This is for the lower portion where I did minor tweaks to the brightness down here and exposure. And then I could have done one to the sky. I don't think I did. But basically I pulled the vibrance a little bit. So here you see it's a little muddy here. Now it's better. Look at the sky, purpley to a little bit more blue by just pulling that. And that's the finished image. So it's a matter of tweaking. Now, if this wasn't not an Olympic image, let me go back here. Let's close that. We go to the finished product. Do you see the wires? These are the guidelines, the guide wires. That's for the little camera that flies around over these guys. I would love to take those out, but again, it's an Olympic image, I'm allowed to. So I can make adjustments to shadows, to highlights, but I cannot clone things out. I did crop this image. If you notice the original image over here, I told you I don't like bright things on the edge. There's a scoreboard over here on the far side left. And I cropped it so that was not in the image because I didn't want to see that. That we can do. All right. Keep going here. And I will take questions when I'm done with these examples, I promise. Here's a shot I did at a bar mitzvah. This is a young man who was being lifted up by his friends. I love that. Here's the beginning. Here's the end. Very different shot. Now, I chose when I edited this, if you leave optics correction on, it'll get rid of the fisheye look. Let's not do that. Now, it's very blue because they had a lot of blue uplighting in this room. A couple things I want to change here. So for one, this one needs some work on the white balance. So here's our temperature. Let's warm this up from the blues. Oh, let me do this. Hold on. Well, we could do that. Let's go ahead and leave this be. Hold on here. Let me come back to this for 1 second. And let's adjust that. Let's go back. Okay, so exposures, let's hit auto. Okay, auto gets us closer, right? Look, I want you to look at his shirt right here when I hit auto. Do you see the difference? You get a lot more detail in that, but he's still way too blue. So I'm gonna come in here and let's warm this up. And watch this tint. See how he looks kind of yellow. By pulling the tint, see that? I can take from this bluish to more lifelike. That's more like what we saw by just adjusting the temperature and the tint. Now, let's say that that's what we want. That looks pretty good. Exit signs are the banes of my existence. So again, I'm gonna use the J tool, the healing brush, and just paint these out. Here's a fire extinguisher sign. Get rid of these. Let's get rid of that red light because it looks like something I don't like. There. Maybe get rid of the reflection of that one. And there's something over here on the wall. Oh, there's some garbage on the ground. Let's get rid of that. Some other stuff here. Again, this is being overly detailed, but I do this for every shot. I can even get rid of this thing if I want at the top. There's our finished image. So by just using the healing brush, it's so easy to paint the stuff out. Here's another napkin if I want to paint this out or something. Let's see, I don't want to get too close to the people. There. And that looks pretty darn good. So again, simple stuff, huge difference, okay? So I want to show you a couple of shots I did that were a lot of work. So this is kind of going outside the 10 features, but here's a shot of Hannah at Disneyland. Now, you know Disneyland, she worked at Disneyland, which is why we did the pictures there. But we tried to get access into the Disneyland before it opened and we couldn't. This is the original shot. Actually, this is the original shot. So I did is I went in and I did a sky replacement, which is a simple feature inside of Photoshop. But I stole all the people. So this is just playing around. So it was that. And then I went in and I cropped it and I went and I cloned out every person in the shot. Now, you'll see a lot of imperfections in here. So this is not the kind of image I would deliver to a client because it looks kind of obviously that I modified it. But this was me just kind of having fun to see how much I could remove all the people that were walking behind her. And I took like this part of the wall and tried to extend it all the way across. So it was across like this. But yeah, I mean, again, fun, but not something that you'd probably want to do. Okay, so now before I go into questions and answers, I want to show you the shot I did this weekend. Here's the picture I took. So they had, I went and went to their home here in Woodside, California, where I was doing the wedding. They were getting married at their house. It was a very small wedding with like 12 people. Um, and they said, "Oh, we have this wall behind our pool. It's lit up and we have fire behind it." Um, I thought that'd be really cool. So I wanted to get a picture of them. So after the wedding was over, I went and I took a picture. You'll see my light stand is over here. I have an umbrella with a flash. I'm pointing the flash at them to light them up. So I'm remotely firing my Canon EX600 RT flash from the flash that's on my camera. So I had a little bit of flash coming from my camera, but most of that juice that you see here is this flash powered up. Now the problem was it lit up the whole wall. So over here we see a little bit of the blue, but obviously that light, which lit them, blasted and got rid of the color on the wall. So what I did is I went and I shot the wall about 10 minutes later, knowing that I was going to need that for a different shot. And what I did was I then combined those into one shot. So here's the photo that I combined. So if you look here, what I did is I took them out of the first shot and dropped them into the second shot that I took. And I included the reflection of them and basically just drop them in. So and it's pretty easy to do this. Let me just show you how. This is called a layer mask. Looks like I might have missed some. I did this on my laptop, so this is not a finished product yet. But let me see here. This is actually in the sky or not. Nope, that was not there. So if I were to go to the original image, they're not even there, right? And I can go back and paint them back in. Now, if I paint them back in wildly, I get some of the wall with the white on it. So I don't want to do that. So what I have to do is I have to go through and very carefully, this is why I love the Wacom tablet. I can paint in, and I'll just do this roughly here, around them here to make it look real. And again, this is not perfect, but you get the idea. So, and I also painted out the flyaway hairs. So that's how I got the finished product. So again, I took the photo knowing there's no way that I was going to be able to, take this image and avoid that light. Now I could have used a grid and tried to just get the light on them, but it would have taken a while and they didn't have much time. So I just blasted light on them and knowing that I'd have to do the tweak later. So, all right. So now let me come out of this. And I want to show you one other thing. When I deliver an image to a client, so let's go ahead and say that, or put them on the blog. Here's the image of the Eiffel Tower. And I told you the couple of things I do is I like shortcuts I've created. So one of them is, you'll see here, I've got a bunch of shortcuts here for vignettes, for different reduction. Like I want this to be 25% size. I can just create that. If you've never seen this inside of Photoshop, you might have seen it look like this. If you just come over here to button mode, you can change it to actual buttons, which is really cool. So I could say, I want this to be 10%. Or I have different, even for teeth whitening, which is an action I created, which highlights the yellow, pulls the saturation out of it, and brightens things up. But let's say I want also to predefine a brush. As I told you, I like to do this. So if I go to my brushes, you'll see I've got a brush here, a whole bunch of brushes. Here's one with my logo on it. So I can paint this. I can resize the brush to whatever I want. I can change the color. So if I want a watermark, and you'll see this a lot of times on the blog, I can easily paint it because it's a brush by just taking, and you can take anything. I can take the Eiffel Tower here and make it a brush. So it's a great trick for watermarking and making things easy. So that's one of my other favorite things to do. All right, so just kind of recap through here. So inside of Camera Raw, let me go for a second back to here. Making those adjustments to exposure, contrast, shadows, and highlights. That's where I live, kind of up here. Okay, you might adjust your temperature, so your white balance, or maybe the tint as well. Okay, and again, if it's something that needs heavy tweaking to a person, you could come in here and say highlight a person or a brush and brush things out. You can do that too. The J tool, which is the healing brush, which is my favorite brush of all, and you saw me use it quite a bit just now. I use it a lot, probably 75% of what I do inside of Photoshop when I'm doing things for clients is painting out those flyaway hairs and things. Cloning, sharpening, dodging and burning. Don't do a lot of dodging and burning. The brightening to the eyes that you saw that I did is rare, but I still use it. Um, so those are the main things I'm doing. Now I want to go in the next 15 minutes and take questions. Let me stop the share for, well, actually I won't. Want you guys other questions that I need to be aware of, Fred?
We do have a couple questions from the YouTube, and I want to open it up for anybody watching. If you haven't entered your question in, please feel free to do so now. But let's start off with Jorge Braquero. Why do you prefer auto over the new adaptive color?
Because I've used auto for so long and I find that it does such a good job of getting me to where I need to be that, again, I don't look at auto as perfection. There are sometimes I'll take a photo and auto is wildly off, especially on night shots. Like here, if I go to this shot and hit auto, it's probably gonna be horrible. Let me see. It opens up and shows me the slide here, and I don't want to see a slide. So I want them to be darker in the background. So it's not always perfect. And I've had at times when I use auto and the person gets completely blown out or whatever. So it's not perfect, but I find that auto gets me about 80 or 90% of where I want to be. And then I make the final tweaks from there. And honestly, it's been so good. I don't see a reason to change at this point.
Yeah,
Doesn't
I
mean I
mean,
won't, but
you've been at it with your workflow for so long that it's, like there's a certain amount of comfort too working with.
yeah, changing workflow is brutal.
Yeah.
When I switch to a new app, it's hard. And honestly, like even Zenfolio, which, the first time I switched from an older service to Zenfolio, there was a learning curve and I was like really resistant to it. And then once I did it, I was so glad I did because, like I said, I've been living on it for 15 years. But changing workflow is hard. And so I give this as a guideline to people of what I use. It doesn't mean it's perfect for everybody. I'm just saying, like for me, there's a couple other things. I also work for speed. Um, for the Olympics, making this quick, hitting auto at the Olympics and making quick tweaks and getting it out is more important than fine tuning everything. Whereas if I'm home, like even the shot of the Eiffel Tower from the Olympics, I reworked it once I got home because I was working so fast in Paris that I didn't take time with it. So speed is of the essence. So I tend to have to balance out everything when I use the features. But that's why I love the healing brush because it's so accurate. And the remove tool is so accurate that it allows me to take people out. It's incredible.
Yeah. And I think adaptive color is one of Adobe's AI tools. So it's, trying to pull from images that are like the one that you're trying to adjust. So if speed's the name of the game, I think it's actually going to slow down your process.
Well, here's the other thing. This is also controversial. Is we had a meeting at the Olympics about can you even use AI
Mm.
for photos? Now, obviously, we can't remove people. Like, let me go in just for the heck of it, since we're having fun here. Let's go to this image for a second. If I wanted to remove, whoops, wrong one. Let's try to remove some people here. Let's see what happens for AI if because I when I took these shots, it was before AI even existed here. Let's see what happens with all the people on this side of the frame. To your point, it's going to take a while.
Yeah.
But the other thing is again, a lot of well, if I'm shooting, well, like look at that. I mean, that did
Wow,
not.
there's a horse.
Yeah, that is bizarre. Well, there you go. It doesn't always work. That is funny. There you go. Uh, a horse and well, they have horses on Main
That's
Street.
true.
But yeah, I mean, again, AI is not perfect. And so yeah, and you have to be careful where you use it too. I'm assuming that if I just did these two people here, maybe alone, let's try something a little less invasive. Let's see what happens here.
You'll get a llama there instead.
Yeah, right. Or another horse. Let's see what happens. Oh, put a garbage can or something.
A conversation.
And so like this is where and so if I were to clone, let's say from right here, and just kind of clone her out by hand, it might be better.
Oh.
Now you see, okay, one thing, this is actually a good note for everybody. Do you see that repeating pattern in that line right there? What you don't want to have is this, where you're cloning and you end up with the same line over and over. That's a telltale sign that's been worked on. So if I was doing this, I would come in here and just try to take these out with whatever tool you want, but you don't want those lines there. So I digress.
All right, so we have Peter Marcus asking, is not the Lightroom develop panel the same as in Photoshop? Oh, and to follow up, Michael Perry asked, do you use Lightroom at all for editing and
Don't
cataloging?
I don't. I don't use Lightroom at all. I use it 1% of the time, and I'll tell you when. So yes, Lightroom and Photoshop, the camera raw portion of Photoshop is probably, I think it's the same code base, I think at Adobe, pretty sure. So yes, they're very similar. And a lot of those same tweaks I showed in camera raw can be done in Lightroom. The reason I don't use Lightroom is it's not fast enough. Photomechanic is much, much faster for culling through images. Um, and I like the power of Photoshop and the things I can do in Photoshop that I can't do in Lightroom.
Hmm.
And I actually, this is again a workflow thing. I don't like having everything in one giant collection. So I
Right.
prefer not to have them that way. I have everything. If I show you, well, I shouldn't because there's confidential names in there. But if I show you my list of everything I've shot, it's coded by year, month, date, dash, person's name, dash the event, like wedding, bar mitzvah, whatever it might be. And so I've got my stuff organized. I can find any image on my server in a minute or two. Like I don't care how old it is, I can go back and find it. So I don't really need the collections per se. Um, but I mean, and the only time I do use Lightroom, which is like I said, 1% of the time, is I've had times where I've had a second shooter, a third shooter, or an associate shooter shoot for me, and like I had one, and they just shot really dark, and it bugged me. So I went in and I just did a global um, change to exposure +1 or
Hmm.
minor tweaks each one to get it closer. Because when I post to Zenfolio to my gallery, none of those are edited. So I tell my clients, you pick your images for your album, whatever. If they're too bright, too dark, don't worry, I fix all that later. If you've got acne, flyaway hairs, exit signs, I'm taking care of all that later. So all I'm doing is putting the raw stuff up. Well, if the white balance is really bad in a certain building that we're shooting in, everything's really yellow, like ultra yellow, I'll pull it in Lightroom, make tweaks, and then I'll use those JPEGs to put into Zenfolio. But
Hmm.
that's really very rare, maybe once every couple of years that I'll do
Hmm.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it seems like it speaks to the speed of your workflow again. Doing something in Lightroom, if you have the extended tools available to you in Photoshop and you're already in there, you don't have to go from one to the other and then back and so forth and so on.
Well, and I find that the power of Photoshop is still more powerful than Lightroom. And
Yeah.
so, to me, Photoshop is like Lightroom Plus, right? And so I've been using it so long that I find that, I mean, some people swear by the non-destructive piece of Lightroom, which I understand, and that works great for some people. For me, if you look at my typical images, it would be, and I've renamed these, but normally this would be like, beach volleyball, Paris 2024, and this would be edit dash beach volleyball. And
Hmm.
so I just put an edit dash in front of my finished work, like this one here. But here, actually, this has the edit dash with their names. And so that's what a finished product would look like. It'd be edit dash, and I color code those such that I can go in and find the ones that are finished. That's
Um,
my way.
mhm. We have Sarah Lynn Hartman asking, do you use other Topaz tools in addition to denoise?
Sarah, I'll see you in Galapagos. Let's see. Um, Mostly, I've used the upscaling for a couple images. Um, else have I used? I've used a couple things of theirs, but I'll be honest with you. To me, by far and away, the best feature in Topaz is the denoise because it's the first program I've used where it actually denoises and doesn't lose the detail. It actually adds sharpness, which is crazy. And the first time I saw it, I was absolutely blown away because in the past, if you took out the noise, you lost it. It became like a muddy image. It's like, oh, well,
Hmm.
which one do I, the worst of two evils, which one do I want to take? So this way I can actually have that ability to both. It's pretty cool.
We have Steve Shaw asking, how did you do the sharpening on Hannah's eyes again? He missed something.
All right, let me head back up there. Let's which one do we want? Let's use let's actually we'll go back to the same one. Here's the raw image. So tweak. Let's just get a little brighter. Let's just go to about there. All right. So now I'm in Photoshop. I'm gonna zoom in on the eyes. They're pretty sharp already. By the way, I should mention one of the things that's I always aim for is to get as close to finished as I can in camera. But here, what I'm gonna do is I go to the sharpening tool. That's this one here. Sorry. You'll see blur, sharpen, and smudge. So I grab the sharpen tool. I come in here and just by doing a little bit of tweaking, and maybe even to the teeth, you can, and it really makes a huge difference by just sharpening it up. So let me go back for a second. Let me do this eye. Here's before and after. Let me zoom in more so you can see this, everybody. Do you see that? And believe it or not, that does make a difference. You don't want to go crazy and over sharpen. That looks terrible. But by just adding a little bit is kind of nice. Now, also you can see here, if I zoom in here, I'll take these out. I'm back to the healing brush. Oh, no, I'm not. Hold on. Spot healing brush.
J tool.
J tool. And I'll take this stuff out. So when I zoom in, I can see additional stuff that I missed. Again, you don't have to go crazy here, but certain stuff, like we'll take that out. There's a little dot here. We can take that white spot out here if we want. Right? Little pimple there. Maybe take that out. Whatever. I'm just showing you like what I can do here. And there's that bug that we saw. Gone. So, but the sharpening tool is right here. And I generally not only use this for people, but here for like this shot, let's go into the bird.
Yeah.
Right? I can come in here and sharpen that eye a little bit, sharpen the edge of the beak right here a little bit. And that makes a big difference. And even some of the plume feathers in here. Yeah. Makes a difference. Small things. Taking a good
I think after this hour, I'm never going to call it the healing brush ever again.
Call it the J tool. You're going to call it the J tool?
I'm going to call it the Jeff tool.
Yeah, we'll tell Adobe. Rename it.
Rename it. All right. One last question. This one's going to be for me. Considering, your workflow and the speed at which you're working, have you incorporated working on the mobile versions of Photoshop into your workflow yet?
Like for the iPad or phone or any of those?
Yeah.
I've not. So I'm really picky, as you could tell. And so everything I do, I mean, yes, I've taken an iPhone picture and tweaked it in the iPhone, we can edit and tweak, but I've not used any of the Photoshop mobile stuff yet. I did evaluate, and I've got actually an iPad here that the iPad group at Apple sent me to evaluate how it would work for me. And as you mentioned earlier, changing workflow is hard. Going from what I've got with my, I've got the MacBook Pros. Let me show you guys. So this is the MacBook Pro I'm using right now. I've got the plate on here so I can attach my reader.
One second. Let's stop your share so that your show and actually.
Yeah. Good point. Hold on here. Are we back?
Oh, yeah, we're back.
Okay. So this plate here on the laptop is so I can snap on my reader. Hold on. I've got a bunch of readers right here. So like if I've got the reader attached, this is kind of cool. I can just snap it on. So I'm at the Olympics. That's what I'm using. So it doesn't dangle off on my lap, which is cool. I also talked about the Wacom tablet. That's this one. So literally when I'm doing all the stuff I was just doing with you guys, I'm literally pen to tablet here. So you can see it moving around the mouse here. Right now you can't, but if I was sharing my screen, you would. That's the graphics tablet. The tour box. All right, let's see if I can.
Oh, I can help with that.
Nope, you have one too.
Yeah.
This thing is awesome.
It is great.
This one here is my brush size, and then hardness, and then zoom within Photoshop, and you can customize it, right? And this thing's really inexpensive and really good. So, so what I do is I work two-handed. So one hand's on the tour box, and this hand is on the tablet, and then periodically I go to the keyboard. But all of it works in concert to me. I don't even think about it. It allows me to work really fast. So changing to mobile down the road could make sense, but I'm so used to downloading and also having massive amount of data that I don't see that happen. I've never seen an Olympic photographer use anything other than a laptop yet.
Yeah. There are, I mean, it's mobile OS versus full OS. There are limitations to what you're going to be able to be
Yeah, I mean, I
capable of
think
doing,
eventually,
but
like for instance, I know that like in the iPad, if you have a stylus, and you could do similar things to what I'm doing with the tablet, right? Taking out the flyaway hairs and
Mhm.
stuff like that. But like, I take my laptop with me. I was actually at the wedding. It's funny because it was, like I said, it was a very small wedding, and they did a little dinner afterwards. Well, while they were eating dinner, I had my laptop opening. I was already editing that
Mm.
photo I just showed you, where I composited them in, was done on their dining room table or their kitchen table while they were in the dining room eating. Um, but I think that would have been very difficult to do in a mobile setting,
Mhm.
app. Yeah,
Right. Well, Jeff, it's that time. Thanks so much for this update on the topic.
no problem. Glad to do it. And like I said, some of the stuff didn't exist, as you mentioned. So
Yeah.
it's cool to see. I mean, even like the remove tool, you can see that, what it does is amazing. And again, I'm using it more and more, still using the other one first. But those are things you want to play with to make your life easier.
Yeah. And, like I remember the healing tool, uh, maybe like a decade ago, or not a decade ago, a while ago,
5 years
and
ago.
then versus using it last week, and it's the tool's literally just gotten better as versions keep coming out.
Yeah, when you go through a chair leg and the leg stays, it's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah. I mean, and this is where this I always tell people, our goal is to make those images better than our people always say, you make me look better than I really am. I'm like, hey, well, you don't want to make it look fake, but you want to make it look good. By
Yeah.
the way, I should mention good editing is like good seasoning. So if you make eggs and you dump too much salt on them, you've ruined your eggs. If you slightly salt them, you add to the flavor. And editing is like that too. If you overdo the saturation or over edit and make someone look fake and tweak their nose and their lips, or then you've gone too far.
All right. Well, Zenfolio, thanks for hosting this talk for our audience. Everyone, thanks for taking the time to be here with us. If you want to rewatch this or any other educational content from us, be sure to check out the BH Event Space YouTube channel. Jeff, I was going to ask you if you had any parting words, but that egg analogy, I think, wins the day
Does it make you hungry?
a
All
little bit.
right, we're
Oh,
getting.
it's lunchtime for you too, right? So
Oh, it's
perfect
past
timing.
1 o'clock. I gotta go chow.
All right. Well, Jeff, thanks again. Zenfolio, thanks again. Audience, thank you.
Thank you.
With that, this has been another edition of the B&H Virtual Event Space. Enjoy your day.